Hey there, everyone. Art Burns here. I hope you're all having a great day today. So, in my work as a stress reduction coach, working with mindfulness practices, I get a lot of people coming into me and talking about, achieving a state of bliss through meditation and mindfulness. And this is especially true for people who are used to kind of things like a weekly yoga class, right? Or even a couple times a week going to yoga class. That's the place where I go. Meditation is the place I go where I'm just going to, kind of achieve this blissful state for this time. It's going to relax me. It's almost like going and getting a massage. I'm going to feel great, and it's going to, feel great for a couple of hours, maybe even a day or two, and just kind of, like I'll do that periodically and help myself feel better, right? And of course, it works that way to a degree, right? Like getting into a state of meditation, right, is a dissociative state, right? And so what we do is we kind of unplug from that very busy, just the state of stress that we feel, right? Especially with people that I work with, right, who are experiencing high levels of stress. And this is whether you're a parent or anything else that you're doing in your life, right? When we're dealing with chronic stress, that is the feeling that we have, right? We have this feeling like we're always panicked, like we're always like kind of, sometimes I describe it as like we're walking through jello, like it's just so hard to get things done. The reason for this is that we're in survival mode, right? And everything that happens to you, every decision you make, every thought that comes into your mind, every emotion that you feel is going to be in the service of survival. And you simply can't thrive and survive, and be in survival mode at the same time. It's just not, it doesn't work that way, right? And so yes, to a certain extent, a daily meditation practice is about getting into that dissociated state, right? To kind of unplug from all of the busyness and just spend some time simply, I'm resisting use the word rest, because we don't want to think about it so much as resting the mind, even though that's what it feels like, right? Like that is the ultimate, kind of effect of it. But it's much better to look at mindfulness and meditation practice as something that is not so much an escape, right? And in fact, there's a term for this, right? There's a term called bliss bypass, right? Which is, kind of something that comes up in the spiritual community quite a bit, right? That we're getting into this place of bliss so that we don't kind of have to address the things that are causing the stress and the difficulties that we're feeling in our lives, right? So mindfulness, right, is about the opposite of that, right? It's about the opposite of the bliss bypass. In fact, what mindfulness is about turning towards those things that are difficult for us, turning towards the things that are causing us this suffering that we're feeling, right? And as we turn towards those things, right, and we address them in a non-judging way, right? Like not thinking about it like, oh, this is a bad part of my life, right? No, it's not. It's just part of your life. And your life is comprised of all kinds of things, right? There's positive things, there's negative things, and then there's a lot of neutral things too. Mindfulness is about turning towards all of it and accepting all of it on a moment by moment basis, right? And when we can do that, right, then even no matter how busy you become, you're never going to get into that stress place, right? Because I should say never, but it's never going to be the thing that completely hijacks the day and completely overwhelms you for periods of time, right? I say the day, but sometimes it could be hijacking in a whole month, that we feel, from the stress response, right? Because the stress response is the reaction, the response that your body is having to this fear, right, of what you're going through, right? And so when we can reduce and eliminate that fear, right, and we do that through non-judging awareness, because being busy is not necessarily something to be afraid of, right? We're only afraid when we're thinking about what's going to happen in the future, right? And when we think about what's happening in the future, then we're not attending to what we're doing right now, which then causes this sort of spiraling effect, pardon me, of consequences, right? Because when we're not attending to what is happening right now, right, then we're going to make mistakes, we're going to make oversight, we're going to have other issues are going to spring from our inability to really focus on what we're doing right now. Whether that's how we talk to somebody, whether that's not remembering something, whether that's how we kind of treat someone like our children, whether it's just making a straight mistake at work, or whether it's being absent-minded and going too fast on the highway and getting pulled over and getting a speeding ticket, right? And then that speeding ticket causes more stress, right? Because now you have to pay $100 and something, and you gotta, your insurance might go up, and now there's all kinds of other stressors that come from that experience, and that's how it all happens, right? And I could do that for each one of those things that I just named, right? So how you talk to somebody, you say something that you really wish you hadn't said, now you're going to be locked in this emotional kind of trap of like, what is the effect going to be? Like, how's this going to play out? What's going to happen now that I did that? And gosh, I wish I could go back in time and change it, right? So that's, while you're in that place, other things in your life are going to be happening, and you're not attending to those either, right? So that's how this whole thing compounds, right? And of course, when it comes to parents, right, when we do things out of stress and just absence of the present moment, right, we start to create a really big level of shame for ourselves, because we look back and we say, oh, that was a great opportunity. My child really wanted to hang out with me, and I could have hung out for those 5 or 10 minutes and made such a big difference in her life, but I didn't. And now, you know what? That moment is never going to come back. And now we feel such guilt and we feel such shame over that, right? That guilt and that shame, again, while we're trying to process that and sort of reconcile that emotion back to our normal state, right? Because again, now we're in the stress response from that shame, because we're afraid of what that makes us. We're afraid of what that's going to mean for the rest of our lives, for the rest of our child's life. How big does this get, right? And this all happens very much in the background and very, very quickly. It's not something where we're, sitting there biting our fingernails all day just thinking about it, but it's in the background, right? And while it's in the background, the next time your child comes to you and you're in that place, it's harder still to come back and be present. And the thing is that, as I've talked about here a lot, is that your child will feel it, right? Your child will feel this level of stress that you're feeling. She or he will feel this level of shame that you're feeling. He or she will feel you beating yourself up over it. And when they feel that, that's when they start to feel like it's their fault, right? And now your shame has become your child's shame, right? And your fear has become your child's fear. And now you are, kind of progressing through this life based on fear, right? Like, fear is the thing, right? So this is where a lot of people would say, okay, yeah, so I need a break. I got to go to yoga class. I got to go to, to my meditation, center, so I can do my weekly meditation. I need to get that calm back in my life, right? And that's great. And it's almost like a massage, right? So if you go to yoga, you go to a meditation center, you go get a massage, you go work out, you go for a bike ride, you go for a walk, you go for a hike in nature, doing all those things are great for you, right? And they're going to maybe last anywhere from a few hours to a couple of days, right? But at some point, that kind of wears off, right? And then what happens is when you get back, when that sort of euphoric effect starts to lessen, then that's when another trigger happens, right? That's when another event or experience happens in your life that makes you react in a stressed way, right? It causes the stress, you react in a way that again causes more problems. Right? And so this is how the cycle happens. And so that's why when we talk about mindfulness practices, when I talk about mindfulness practices and meditation, it's not about that sense of bliss bypass, as they say. Right? In fact, it's the opposite. It's about addressing, like, what is it that makes me, think about all these future things? What is it that I'm afraid of? Right? Like, really, and where does the, more accurately, not what is it that I'm afraid of, but where is the fear coming from? right? And when we can face that, and when we can turn towards it and accept it for what it is, now we can start kind of peeling away. I always tell this to my clients, that meditation and mindfulness practice is not an additive process, it is a subtractive process. It's like peeling away an onion, right? The more we peel it away, the more we get to that root, right? Where that core of where these fears are coming from that cause the stress that we're feeling in our body every day. And once we can deal with that, right, now there's nothing that, we become, like they say, bulletproof, right? Like it's not, like you become resilient to it, and now this takes time to get to that level, right? But immediately what we can do is we can simply practice, right? We can simply practice on a moment by moment, day by day level. We can practice just paying attention to what is happening with us as it's happening, right? And this, of course, includes, as I talk about here a lot, this includes, first and foremost, it includes all of the mundane stuff that we do all the time, right? Like while we're driving our car, while we're washing dishes, while we're cooking, while we're cleaning, while we're eating, while we're walking, while we're, doing all of the so many mindless things that we do all day long, right? Bring attention and awareness to those things, right? So when you're sitting there in your car and you find your mind wandering off, thinking about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen tomorrow in that meeting, or what, how am I going to get this project done next week, or gosh, how much time are my kids spending in front of their screens here in COVID-19, and what devastating effect is this having on their health, And when you find yourself starting to think about all that stuff, bring yourself back. Just bring yourself back. Feel the steering wheel in your hands. Feel your feet on the floor. The foot on the gas pedal and the other foot on the floor. Straighten your posture a little bit. Notice the position of your body. Bring yourself back in, right? Bring yourself into alignment of what is happening right here, right now. Right? And when we can do that, that's when, we stop thinking about that fearful thing that is happening, right? We stop projecting into that thing, and now we feel the reduction of the stress. Then we find that bliss that we need, right? And we can find it on a moment-to-moment basis, right? And again, it's not a bliss bypass at that point. It's a practice it's a process that gets us to live in a way that is free from the stress that we feel. Right? And now this is something that's really also, one of the things I talk about here. I talk a lot about presence, I talk a lot about acceptance, and I talk a lot about compassion, right? And this very act is an act of compassion, because the thing is, stress can be seen as, stress is based on fear, right? And another thing that is based on fear is trauma. Right? The trauma is both the damage that is happens to us, but also it is the fear of damage happening to us, right? And so when we're, when we look at things like trauma, right, and we can apply the same thing to stress. I don't know anybody who has done this in a sort of academic level, right? But 77% of American adults deal with chronic stress. Right, which means that every single day we're doing exactly what I described. Right, we're thinking about next month, next week, tomorrow, in an hour. We're thinking about the stuff that's coming up that is going to cause us suffering, and we're afraid of that. And our bodies are going into the stress response. Okay, 77% of us. Right, now remember what I told you. Right, when we're feeling the stress, everyone around us is feeling our stress too. Right? Whether it's our children, which are going to feel it the most, right? Because they're so attached to us and they're so acutely aware of the emotions, right? They feel their emotions so strongly, right? So they're going to feel it the most. But everyone around you is going to feel it, right? If you have people who report to you at work, they are going to feel it. If you have, colleagues around you, they are going to feel it. Your friends are going to feel it. Your spouse is going to feel it. everyone around you is affected by the stress that you're feeling. Okay, this is not a spiritual concept. This is not a philosophical concept. This is a hard-nosed scientific concept called empathic resonance, right? And this is something that we all feel. And so by fixing ourselves, right? And I say fixing, I shouldn't use that word, because it's not that something's wrong with you, but by altering the way that we experience life so that we're no longer experience it with a place of chronic stress, what we do is we start resonating that positive and comfortable and at ease sense that people have. You know, people tell me oftentimes that I walk into a room and people feel like, oh man, it feels like, like everything's going to be okay, you know? And that's because it is, right? Because I am exuding that level of confidence and that level of ease and that level of peace within myself. And people can feel it. Right? And you can feel it too, right? If you really pay attention, you can feel when you're with someone who is, feeling a strong emotion on some level, you're going to feel that, right? And when you're in the presence of someone who is at peace and who is calm and who is zenned out, you're going to feel that too. Right? If you allow yourself to feel it. Now, of course, and that's what I was talking about before, like you can't feel it if you're wrapped up in this stress and this emotional overwhelm and trying to resolve all these emotions that you're feeling, right? You can't feel it. So that's the point, right? So the more we can work on this, the more we start chipping away at what everybody else is going through as well. So this becomes very much an act of compassion. And I'm going to make a video next week about this because it's so important. But, we come into this world with a basic sense of innate goodness, right? That's just true, right? They've done hundreds and hundreds of studies that have shown this with babies and puppets and everything, just showing that, 10 times out of 10, a baby is kind, a baby is generous, a baby is helpful and grateful, and that's the way babies are. We dwell in that. That's how we come into this world, right? So by getting back into that innate sense of kindness, that's when the good stuff happens. That's when we really start feeling and we start being who we're supposed to be. But again, I'll do more on that next week, all right? So I hope this gave you some good kind of ideas to think about over the weekend coming up. If you have a weekend, you might be someone who works Saturday and Sunday, and that's cool, but I hope this gives you something to think about wherever and whatever you're doing. And of course, I talk about this like it's like, oh, just start doing it, and I know that it's hard, right? Because you've built habits for, 30, 40, 50 years, 20 years. You've built habits of how you act right now. So every time you drive, your mind is used to going into all these different places, right? So it's something that's kind of not as easy as I make it sound, right? It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. But all it requires is a dedicated level of committed practice. And we're talking about a few minutes a day, okay? And with the coaching, you can certainly get that practice going in your life sooner and deeper. So if you'd like some information about that, please hit me up, let me know, and I will certainly love to get on a call with you and see what we can figure out. All right, and if it makes sense, we work together. If it doesn't, I'll give you a couple of tips and we'll send you on your way. All right, everybody, wishing you well. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a wonderful, whether you're off in the next couple of days or you're working the next couple of days, I hope you have a wonderful time. I hope you meet this time with presence, acceptance, and compassion. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.